say, which is if State School Ventures took 10 minutes instead of 8 weeks, what would the messages be? So that hopefully you can go away with something today, which is at least fundamentally the sort of things that I would cover on the program. The first one, and maybe the most important one, is like the notion of talent and what it means in early stage technology. Now, this is just like my shorthand. Like I have made this up myself. It probably chimes with some things that other people would say, but the reason I say that caveat is I don't want you to think, this is prescriptive. I don't think you should let anyone tell you whether or not you're a talented potential early stage entrepreneur, but this is fundamentally what I look for. The items in black, resourcefulness and persistence, I find are kind of table stakes sort of characteristics. Resourcefulness, like I don't want these words to be like intimidating. It really means, when I set out to do something, do I get it done, and am I able to make things happen as hurdles appear? Like do I find a way around them? Most successful entrepreneurs, or in fact all successful entrepreneurs I've met or worked with, are both resourceful and persistent. The things then in orange, I think ideally you'd be all of these things, but I think if you were one or two of them, it's normally enough. So the first is, can you build? The second is, can you sell? And the third is, do you have deep domain knowledge of something? Building in my world is mostly kind of software, like science and technology. I think you could extrapolate this more generally to, can I write a play? Can I make music? Can I make food? There's lots of ways of building, but in my world, it's mostly technology. Can I sell? And again, I realize like when you're young, it might not be clear whether you can sell, but some of the things I think that Sam mentioned earlier are kind of leading characteristics of whether or not you can. So, for example, can you connect with people when you walk into a room? Do you listen? Do you try and solve problems for people? Those sorts of things would point towards an ability to sell. And the final item is deep domain knowledge. So that's just knowing a lot about something. Like if you had 10 years of experience in the construction industry, then you'll probably be well placed to launch some sort of startup that solves a problem in the construction industry, just because you would know how it works. You might know some of the potential customers. You might know people who you could hire. And at the start of your journey, there's plenty of people who start companies in their late teens and early 20s. So you don't need 10 years of experience if you do know a lot about something. So, I've met very young people who know a lot, basically because they've sort of taught themselves, or they've been directed by their own curiosity into certain areas where they just know more than 99.9% of other people kind of would. So resourcefulness and persistence, I think, are the kind of underpinning characteristics. And then one out of, can you build, can you sell, or do you have deep domain knowledge? You don't have to do all of those, the three last things. Lots of the best founders I know, for example, could build and have learned how to sell after working on it, or have like paired up with someone who can. The next thing which I think is very important is to always think big. When I first left university, and certainly when I started my own company, I would deliberately downplay the things I was trying to do, even when I was trying to sell them. And the reason I would do that is because in the culture I grew up in, I didn't want to like exaggerate. I didn't want people to think, oh, he's making this stuff up. And I wanted them to think that what I was talking about was realistic. But as a result, I sort of hamstrung myself a bit because, well, there's a number of reasons why you sort of shouldn't do it. The first is that building any startup is hard, and so it might as well be worth it. And so if you're going to embark on, dedicating your life to working hard, being persistent, being resourceful for a number of years, then the outcome needs to be commensurate with that. Because if you're a talented person, which I believe all of you are, there's an opportunity cost to pursuing something. So you should be as ambitious as you can be, when you set out. The second is Zoe mentioned something about like the tools available around funding and stuff. We live in a great time, and one of the characteristics of the time we live in is the world is globalized. Everybody wants the same things, and technology allows us to distribute it across borders. So if you come up with a concept or a tool or a service that works in Ebervale, it'll probably work in Abertillery, it'll probably work in Cardiff and Glasgow and London and Berlin and New York and Singapore, because these days people generally just want the same things. If it's good, then there's no reason why you need to clip your own wings. And the final reason why you should think big is because everyone else is thinking big. Elon Musk says he wants to colonize Mars. He doesn't sell the vision of SpaceX as, I want to send a rocket into the sky, even if that is the first step that he had to take. Like along the way, while he's convincing investors and employees to join him, he's telling them he's going to colonize Mars. And even though that's not the first step, I think to have the most ambitious version of what you intend to do in mind is very important. But you do have to start small. So sometimes if you have a very big vision, it becomes almost too hard to think about, well, what's the first step? So most good products and services that have become big have started off with quite a simple iteration that is easily understood, is aimed at a niche part of a market and solves their problems well. So you simultaneously need both. You need a sort of big vision and a small, bite-sized, achievable starting point. The next thing that we cover is to talk to customers. So again, in the early part of my career, I would avoid talking to customers. And the reason I would do it is if you have an idea and you sort of sold on it and, you can sort of fall in love with it slightly, but the truth of the universe is someone prepared to pay for it. And I used to avoid talking to customers because I didn't want them to say no, and because if they said no, it'd be like I'd be defeated, kind of thing. And I've learned that that's a really bad way of thinking of it. Talking to customers helps you understand them. It will help you if you want to raise money for your startup, because investors like people that understand their market well and have customers, or have people who are saying, yes, if you build this, I'd be willing to buy it. Most importantly, it stops you from wasting your time. So forget about investors. Like, you are the first and most important investor in your own startup because it's your life. And if you have an idea, it might be a reasonably good idea, nothing wrong with it. But all the customers in the market that it's for basically tell you it's not right, and then they tell you why it's not right. Then it can save you a lot of time, because you might want to tweak what you're doing or reposition it, or work on something else, or take a job for a while and come back to it at another time when some issue has sort of been overcome. So I think there's like a truth in the universe, and it generally comes from customers, and that is around, like, is there demand for the thing that you want to bring into the world. The final piece on State School Ventures is around funding. So if funding isn't automatic on State School Ventures, but if someone comes on the program and does well, then I'll try and help them raise money, some equity investment. I'm talking in this presentation assuming you're not on State School Ventures, and the good news, again, as Zoe said, is it is a great time, because a lot of the investment community is sort of navigatable from the internet. These days, if you typed into Google or LinkedIn a list of early stage European venture capitalists, you'd get a list. It would probably be on a Google Doc. It would be open, so you wouldn't need to ask for access. It would probably have the web address. It might describe the investing style of the investor. So we invest in consumer, or we invest in AI, or whatever it might be. It might have links to open application forms. So some investors have those, so you can apply for money from wherever you are. Aside from those sorts of tactics, then warm introductions to investors are sort of best. So, say if you were wanting to start a range of gym clothing, which, by the way, sorry, I have no experience of that sort of thing, so I'm making this up as I go along. But if you were to start a range of gym clothing, then potentially, rather than trying to reach out cold to someone who invests in gym clothing, like a first step might be to reach out to someone who's sort of 5 or 10 years ahead of you, who has done well in gym clothing or runs gyms, someone who you can impress with your product or service, and then get them to make you an introduction to the investor. And then the final point is there aren't many ways of sort of cheating investment. So the truth is, it really is about making progress on the product and speaking to customers. If you can do those things, then each incremental day you spend doing those things is probably going to make your fundraising easier. So if it doesn't sort of seem possible, then the answer normally lies in more work on the product or with customers. So yeah, at the start I said I'd talk about what State School Ventures would be if it took 10 minutes instead of 8 weeks. To summarize, ask yourself, what am I uniquely well positioned to succeed at? Like, what is my edge? Then think big, be ambitious, start small, get in front of customers, and if you do those things well, then it's possible to get in front of investors and hopefully be on your bike. And then, speaking of takeaways, I said earlier, state educated people are under indexed, but there are lots of them. And yeah, just 3 examples of South Wales founded startups you've probably heard of. So Just Eat, obviously David Buttress, and Hayley Parsons, who's from Cwmbran, who founded Go Compare. And then, more like my neck of the woods, Anne Bowden, who's from Bonamine in Swansea, founded Starling Bank. Each of them is resourceful and persistent. They can either build or sell or have deep domain knowledge in something at the point that they founded it. And like I said before, like that might be you today. Like it might be you in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But if you have those characteristics, then as Sam said earlier, if not you, then who? Because people like you have gone on and achieved incredible outcomes in this industry, in this sector.